the next one to grow. Anya looked down at her own hands, the dirt darkening her fingertips. "I thought I could skip the waiting," she admitted. "I thought buying beauty was the same as growing it." He didn't scold her. He only nodded, understanding too well the impatience of beginnings. After a pause, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small pouch. Inside was a handful of seeds marigolds, round and dry like tiny curls of parchment. "Try again," he said simply. "Start with the soil." That evening, when the last of the sunlight had faded behind the hills, Anya went to her garden. The earth was cold, and her breath came in soft clouds. She knelt by the withered stalks and began to pull them up, one by one, until her hands ached and her knees were stained. She carried the brittle remains to a small corner and built a compost heap, layering dead leaves and stems just as Ben had shown her. The smell was sharp, earthy, unpleasant, yet strangely alive. She turned the soil next, breaking the clods apart, mixing in the compost Ben had given her. The work was slow and heavy, but there was a quiet satisfaction in it, a rhythm that matched her own thoughts. When she finished, she sat back on her heels, breathing hard. The garden looked bare now, nothing but turned earth and promise. But it was hers, made not by impulse, but by effort. The days grew shorter. Frost edged the windows in the mornings, and the fields beyond the village turned silver with mist. Anya visited her garden every few days, even as the cold deepened, touching the soil, checking the compost, whispering to the sleeping seeds she had planted before the first snow. There was nothing to see, only stillness, but she began to understand that not all growth could be witnessed. When winter finally arrived, Elderbrook lay under a soft, white quilt. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the world seemed to slow to a hush. From her window, Anya could see both gardens blanketed in snow bins, and hers alike indistinguishable now, equal in quiet. She would stand there each night before bed, a cup of tea warming her hands, looking out at the small patch of resting soil. It didn't look like much. It looked, in fact, like nothing at all. But she knew now that something was happening underneath, something small, invisible, and patient. And for the first time, she was content to wait. The spring of understanding. When spring finally returned, Elderbrook awoke in color. The long gray months of winter melted away, and the valley stretched and yawned beneath the sun. The hills wore their first green in months. Soft as moss, and the river once locked in ice now sang again, tumbling over smooth stones with a voice full of joy. Birds filled the mornings with music, stitching their songs between the hours. Anya hurried to her garden, heart pounding like it used to when she was a child running toward a secret. The ground, once hard and cold beneath her fingertips, now trembled with life. Tiny green shoots broke through the surface, one by one, stretching toward the light as if answering a call only they could hear. She knelt beside them, soil clinging to her apron, and brushed her hand across the fragile leaves. "You made it," she whispered. Her voice was soft, but her smile was wide enough to carry a whole season's worth of hope. In the weeks that followed, the garden transformed before her eyes. It was not the sudden miracle she once wished for, not the instant spectacle of flowers she had tried to force last year, but something slower, deeper. Each morning brought a new discovery, a curl of green that hadn't been there before, a bud shyly unfolding, a bee testing its wings in the sun. By early summer, her garden had become something living and whole. Marigolds, daisies, and lavender swayed together in the breeze, their scents mingling like laughter at a festival. The herbs thyme, rosemary, and mint grew thick and fragrant, spilling gently over their borders. Butterflies drifted like living petals, and the bees had returned in such numbers that the air seemed to hum with purpose. One evening, as the sun sank behind the western hills and painted the sky in gold and rose, Anya paused from her work. She stood at the edge of her garden, her hands still dusty, and saw Ben leaning on his old wooden fence, watching her garden with quiet satisfaction. His face, lined from years of sun and soil, held a look that was half pride, half peace. She wiped her hands on her apron and crossed the narrow path between their gardens. I think I understand now, she said. Ben raised an eyebrow, the hint of a smile beneath his beard. Understand what? Anya looked down at the soil beneath her feet, dark, rich, and full of the life she had once overlooked. That I invested in the flowers before I invested in the soil. I wanted results without roots. Ben smiled, slow and knowing. The soil is where all strength begins. It's the part no one sees, but it's what keeps everything alive. Anya nodded. It's funny, she said, glancing toward the rows of plants. When I first started, I thought you were foolish for working so slowly. I wanted beauty to appear overnight. But now, I think the soil was teaching me patience all along. Ben laughed softly, the sound mingling with the rustle of the wind in the leaves. Gardens have a way of doing that, he said. They don't just grow plants, they grow people too. They stood together for a while, saying nothing more. Twilight deepened around them, and the first stars began to appear, faint as forgotten promises. The air smelled of earth and blossoms and something else, quiet wisdom, perhaps, or the memory of seasons past. In the days that followed, Elderbrook changed in small but meaningful ways. The children, who had once come only to marvel at Ben's perfect rows and bright blooms, now visited both gardens. They ran between them, comparing colors and shapes, delighting in how each patch of earth seemed to tell a different story. The villagers, too, began to notice the difference. They spoke of Anya's garden not just for its beauty, but for the feeling it gave a sense of newness, of something that had been earned and nurtured. They often told the story of how two neighbors had been given the same land, yet learned very different lessons from it. Anya never again tried to rush beauty. She tended her soul with care, her hands steady and sure. She came to love the quiet parts of gardening, the weeding, the watering, the long moments of waiting, because she knew that every seed, every season, and every storm had its purpose. Sometimes when the sun was low and the shadows stretched long, she would glance toward Ben's garden. He was often there, bent over his rows, whistling softly as he worked. He would wave, and she would wave back, their friendship rooted as deeply as their plants. And whenever visitors came curious, hopeful, perhaps a little patient, Ben would pause, wipe his hands on his trousers, and say with his gentle certainty, "A garden is like a life. What you see above the ground will never last unless you've cared for what's below it." And Anya, standing beside him, would smile because she finally understood that truth, not just in her garden, but in her heart.